Okay, so guys, if you hear kids laughing and running around in the background, we are just doing a quick recording at my house, and they are busy having a pillow fight. So, welcome to my life. So, yeah, we're just going to have a quick look at aperture, shutter, and ISO. So I'm going to try to keep this very brief and to the point as much as possible. The layouts have already been done, so aperture, shutter, and ISO, and we're just going to start off and jump right in and take it from there. All right, so aperture on your camera, it's because we have so many different cameras, your aperture is going to be adjusted in different ways, but it still does exactly the same thing. Aperture refers to the opening in the lens, as you can see here. On f32, the opening in the lens is very small, meaning that a little bit of light's going to come through. The implication of that is that your foreground and background is both going to be in perfect focus. So everything from right in front of the lens all the way to the back is going to be in perfect focus. If you dial it down closer to a large aperture, or opening up it a little bit more, then let's have a look at f11 compared to f32. You see that the little dude there is perfectly in focus, but your background is becoming a little bit softer. Continuing down on f4, the guy is still in focus, background is more out of focus, and so it goes down. The wider you open up the aperture, or the larger the aperture becomes, the more the background's going to be soft or blurred out, or referred to as bokeh. All right, the second one is shutter speed. Shutter speed, a faster shutter speed, see the fast one is on the left, the slower shutter speed is on the right. The faster your shutter speed is always indicated 1 slash and a number. I think most cameras go to about 1/4000 or 1/8000. If you're shooting digital, you can go up to about 30,000, I guess. But just to keep the chart real simple, the shutter speed fast is going to be a higher number. The faster shutter speed is a higher number, and a slower shutter speed is a slower number. So these can go much slower than this, up to about 30 seconds, I think is standard on most cameras. But the principle of shutter speed is trying to show or indicate motion in your shot. So let's say you're taking a photo of a rugby game or a tennis match or something like that, or a car passing by, and you would like to freeze the wheels. Let's say the guy is driving at 200 miles an hour or kilometers an hour, and you want to freeze the tires or freeze the wheels and don't get any light trails if you're shooting a little bit later in the afternoon. You're going to push up your shutter speed a little bit higher just to freeze the motion. You can see as we venture a little bit more to the right of the page, the slower the shutter speed, the more motion we start to see. So this is actually ideal, having a slower shutter speed if you want to capture something like car trails at night, or if you want to indicate, let's say, water spraying out of a hose pipe, and you want to show the motion, maybe a bride dancing, and you want to show a little bit of motion on the dress or whatever, then you're going to definitely slow down your shutter speed a little bit more. So the slower the shutter speed, the more motion. The faster the shutter speed, the less motion you will have in your shot. The last one is your ISO. I always refer to ISO as, if you can imagine standing in a room and you open up the curtains. The wider you open up the curtains, the more light floods into the scene. So ISO basically works on the entire light sensitivity of your sensor. Low sensitivity, some cameras goes as low as ISO 50, which will be indicated as your base ISO. Some would be ISO 100, ISO 50 or ISO 100. That is your lowest ISO on most of your cameras. And you can see as you go, as you push up the ISO a little bit higher, ISO 1600, 3200, see they double. 3200 double is 6.4. 6.4 double is 12.8. 12.8 double, 25.6. The higher you go, the more noise or digital noise or grain is going to add up in your images, is going to show up. So ideally we try to keep the ISO as low as possible to make sure that we get the best possible quality. Something that you will notice when you push your ISO a little bit higher is that the detail, let's say you're taking a photo of somebody's face, and the hair on the person's hair would still be noticeable on ISO 200, ISO 100 and so forth. But the higher you go, the more detail you're going to sacrifice. So all the little details and lines and so on in your image will become a little bit more noisy, and you will definitely sacrifice detail the higher you push your ISO. So in accordance, these three actually works together. So you can adjust them separately if you're shooting in manual mode, and so all three of them works together. If you if you make changes to your aperture, especially when it's a little bit more low light conditions and so forth, chances are that you're going to have to make adjustments to ISO and shutter as well. It's not very often that you only change the one without influencing the other two. So it's important, especially if you're shooting in manual mode, to keep an eye on these three things. Photography is built, the base or the foundation of photography are built on these three settings: ISO, shutter and aperture.